This is the third module in the QI Family Medicine Resident Curriculum, Building a QI Team. Upon completing this module, you will be able to define the attributes of a team, list and analyze the stakeholders to your improvement opportunity, reflect on the roles needed for your QI team, and determine the optimal team composition. A team is necessarily small. Too many people requires too much structure for truly collaborative effort. The skills of team members complement each other so that the team as a whole is capable of achieving its common purpose. Team members share a vision of what they are about. The team's goals are well defined and aligned with its purpose. Each team member is accountable to the team as a whole for their individual contribution. Let's start with forming your QI team. The first step is identifying your stakeholders, then conducting a careful stakeholder analysis. Who is impacted by the work? Who can contribute to your project? Who has the skills you need? Are they complementary? Who is excited by the project's potential? Forming a high-performing team is a far more intricate process than simply asking, who's interested? What roles will team members play? Have you a diverse group who will approach the project from differing perspectives? You must strategize about who is best to be on the team, who needs to stay in the loop, and who can help in the advisory capacity. You may have identified stakeholders who oppose your project. How will you address this? Finally, select your QI team. Quality improvement is a team activity. It is rarely done by individuals. Step 1. Identify stakeholders. A stakeholder is any person that can claim attention or resources you need for the project, or someone who is affected by the final product. It is a very broad group. It is sometimes helpful to think of a stakeholder for your project as someone or a group that has influence over the area you wish to improve, or may be impacted by the improvement efforts. In other words, they have a stake in the output and success of your project. Typically, the first stakeholders you identify will be part of your organization, but don't limit your thinking. Some stakeholders will make up your QI project team. We classify stakeholders based on their relationship with the QI initiative: patrons, users, advisors, specialists. Patrons of QI initiatives can have a couple of roles. Sponsors want the project to move forward and can provide resources to make it happen. They have authority. In a family health team, sponsors can be the lead physician or the executive director. Patrons may also be champions, people who are passionate about the project and really want to see it succeed. Yes, you are a champion for your own project. Users of the QI initiative are people who benefit from its success, directly or indirectly. Consider people outside the hierarchy of your organization. In patient-centered care, this always includes patients. Some users may be other members of the community, and staff whose work life will improve with the success of your project. Advisors on the QI project are people who are expert within the scope of the project, perhaps someone who has participated in a QI project, or a specialist in the area of medicine you are focused on improving from a process perspective. Finally, there are specialists, people who have unique skills to contribute to the project. Maybe you need someone who is a whiz at producing forms on your team, or someone especially skilled in statistics to help with data analysis, or someone with IT expertise who can navigate around the EMR at your clinic. For this and the exercises that you will see in the remainder of this module, please refer to your workbook for note-taking. You may wish to pause the video so you can reflect on the direction and complete the exercise. This exercise is focused on the identification of your project's stakeholders. Make some notes in your workbook to support the building of your team. The next step, 2, stakeholder analysis, allows you to identify the special skill set or expertise from team members as it applies to your project. What contribution can they make? Is it in the realm of power or influence? How much can they support the outcome of a successful project? Do they really need the project to succeed? Establishing profiles of your stakeholders assists in the determination of whether you have the right people and resources on your team. How can you make the case for change? This is where healthcare practitioners can make good managers. We employ these techniques every day in convincing patients of the need for change and maintaining that change when it happens. For this, we use Prochaska's Stages of Change model, also known as the TRANSTHEORETICAL model. Incorporate this model into analyzing your stakeholders and planning your strategy. Think about where people are in their readiness to change and how to help them move through the change process. In making your argument, have a strong data foundation. Use your process and data tools to develop this. If you want to know the truth, stop having opinions. State the facts. Most of you will be familiar with this model. This is just a quick review of the stages of change. Pre-contemplation. People do not see what you see. In their point of view, there is no need to change. They will not even think about it. Contemplation. People acknowledge the possibility that a problem exists. They are considering the pros and cons of doing something about it. Preparation. People acknowledge that the problem does exist and something should be done. The question is, what? Action. Steps are being taken to solve the problem. People are engaged. Maintenance. The challenge is to convert the change to the new world order and prevent slipping back to old ways. Success is achieved when the change is permanent behavior. Stage of change adds another dimension to your stakeholder analysis. In all likelihood, you identified someone with power and influence who you don't think will support your test of change. Such people may require a specific strategy to move them into a higher stage of change to become engaged. As you begin your QI project in earnest, revisit your stakeholder analysis and identify the stage of change for each individual. See if it makes a difference in the formation of your team or your strategy to engage your stakeholders. The next few slides depict stakeholder analysis examples. Let's look at our stakeholder, Jane Doe. Jane Doe has no real power or influence on the project, is supportive of the project and recognizes urgency, has required expertise needed for the project, has nothing to gain or lose with regard to the outcome of the project. Jane Doe is prepared to champion change. View the analysis for the practice lead physician for our team. Dr. Bigwig, our practice lead, has the ability to influence others, has limited buy-in as she has bigger concerns elsewhere, is not knowledgeable in this area, is not likely to be affected if the project succeeds or fails. Dr. Bigwig perhaps sees a need for change, perhaps not. Our colleague, Dr. John Smith, provides yet another perspective via stakeholder analysis. Dr. John Smith is interested but has limited resources. He's committed but is concerned that changes may result in new issues. He's not proficient in this area. He has a stake in the project and is interested in its success. Dr. John Smith wants changes made. A patient is always an interesting and valuable stakeholder to analyze. Patient A has no influence or power. She is supportive of change and sees the benefits. She's not proficient in this area. She has a stake in the project and will directly benefit from its success. Patient A has been agitating the practice to change. When you include each stakeholder on the analysis template, you can more easily identify who must be further engaged in the QI initiative. You can also assess whether a communication strategy is needed for some stakeholders. For example, if there is variation in the perceived stage of change, perhaps more description about the planned QI project is required. Once you identify the stage a person is at, how do you move them to the next stage of change? To move people from pre-contemplation to contemplation, you need to get them to a point of acknowledging there might be a problem. Raise awareness of the problem. Demonstrate it exists with data. Solicit the help of others in making the case. Engage someone trusted by your reticent stakeholder who may be prepared to help you make the case. Individuals in this stage often focus too much on the negatives. You need to build on the positives. Find out what their specific objections might be and answer them directly. Don't be timid in using an emotional appeal. Bringing the argument back to our values can be an effective strategy. Emphasize the greater good. Keep discussions focused on the patient. Once people believe that there may be a problem, your foot is in the door. Now build on the positives, particularly emphasizing the principles of QI. Change will be small and incremental. Focus on the goal of achieving better care for the patient while increasing provider satisfaction. Clarify the vision of the project. Share your aim statement, your change idea, and the results you are predicting. As people begin to look at action steps, they are engaged. Do they want to join your team? Act as an expert consultant? Facilitate your project in another way? Don't invite them to accept a role you haven't envisioned. Regardless of the stakeholder's role on your project, you may want them to enjoy the benefits of working with an effective team. Improving the dynamic of the QI team improves the practice environment overall. Make sure your tests of change are feasible and simple. Get those quick hits. In the early stages, they will help people become more positive about the project. As the QI team starts to enjoy some successes, post for all to see, and they will feel part of the process. Tell your stories, why you would never go back to what was before. Build in monitoring systems to ensure changed processes remain. Think about sustaining and spreading what works. The next step, or step 3, is to determine how best to engage your stakeholders in your project. You need the right people on and supporting your project. One element of relationship management is knowing who to call on for assistance. Sometimes stakeholders can be a huge help in this. A sponsor's introduction can be very powerful. You will need communications plans for any and all affected by your project, on your team, in your organization, and if appropriate, outside your organization. Failing to communicate will lead to failure to collaborate, disruptive relationships, and unsuccessful project outcomes. Stakeholders may be a big help in their planning and implementation. Creative thinking about your specific initiative will lead you to different ways your various stakeholders can optimize outcomes throughout your project. You need a strategy. Who do you need to be aware of developments in the project as they occur, even though they're not on the team? Have you identified anyone who might work against your project? What can you do to overcome their objections? Of the stakeholders you have identified, who are good candidates for your team? Who do you want to keep in the loop, but not on your team? This can develop widespread support of your project. Maybe they are unable to join your team, but you still value their opinion. Maybe they are powerful or influential stakeholders, and developing their support is important to the smooth running of your project. You need a communication strategy. Map out when and how you will maintain linkages with these stakeholders. You may well have identified stakeholders who oppose your project. They should be engaged in the planning stage of your project in an effort to identify their objection. Perhaps they think the project will impact them negatively, notwithstanding the potential benefit for many. Perhaps they simply do not adapt easily to new ideas. They want to see the benefits before jumping on the bandwagon. It is important to have a clear idea of their position and their interest. You need a communication strategy. What do you need them to know? What is the most persuasive way to tell them? Giving some serious thoughts to this up front will save you time later. Maybe they simply lack information. Maybe you need to strengthen your position with supportive data. Maybe you need to build the necessary supportive relationships with those with the power to override the naysayers. Who do you want on your team? Who has the skills you need? Who is likely to take a collaborative approach to the work? You need commitment to the project. Participation costs time and energy. Will they come through? Consider what other commitments candidates might have. Are you concerned they're spreading themselves too thin? If so, and it is someone you really want, share this concern with them. Tell them you really appreciate their support, but you'd rather they sit this out if they are feeling oversubscribed. And make sure you keep them in the loop as the project moves forward. What roles do you need to move your project forward? This is step 4. As a team, responsibility for the project is shared. Each team member will have different strengths and skills to contribute. Often their abilities will overlap. Roles need to be clearly defined. Consider the professional scope of practice of all candidates for your team. There could well be overlaps. How will you manage this when assigning tasks on the team? It may well be necessary to educate team members about the roles of allied health professionals. If communicated well, mutual respect grows and collaboration is facilitated. Clarity around scope of practice of each of the professionals on your team is required. Are the policies and procedures of your practice limiting? Empowering allied professionals to maximize their contribution may be useful to your project. Consider what will best help to develop the project and take it efficiently and effectively to completion. Think comprehensively, beyond what a physician can do. The allied professionals you work with have a tremendous amount to contribute. Administrative staff are often the most familiar with the strengths and weaknesses of practice procedures, especially as they impact patients. They are usually the first to hear complaints. The potential contribution from nursing staff is enormous. And what about your patients? Can they offer insight into the issue you are tackling? Physicians are just one of many regulated health disciplines. Each has a professional college which establishes regulations for performance. Each profession has an established scope of practice, delineating what they can and cannot do. Familiarize yourself and your team with the scope of practice of your allied professionals. Consult the college's website or simply ask your colleagues. You may be surprised. Although not complete, this is a pretty good list of regulated health disciplines that may participate in family health teams. Each brings its own expertise to the table. Not all healthcare providers are regulated. For example, while a psychologist offers mental health counseling, so do other non-regulated professionals. You may wish to include others at your worksite in your project. For example, if your project focuses on infection control, it may be valuable to have the office cleaner on your team. Consider more than the title or position of potential team members. Consider what they bring to the project. Here are just a few ideas of professions that might add great value to a QI initiative. Looking at your QI project and the team candidates you have in mind, can you think of another discipline or role that would add value to the team? Take a moment and make a note in your workbook. Completing a list and analyzing stakeholders will be a critical piece of your project output. Finally, you are ready to select your team for the current QI initiative. This is step 5. Make sure you have a diversity of roles. You want differing perspectives. And you want stakeholders who have influence, complementary skills, abilities to offer, and need the project to succeed. Their investment in your project implies their support of the change. You now have the tools to select your QI team. Remember to list the stakeholders for your QI project. This should be a long and comprehensive first pass. Identify a team for your QI project by analyzing your initial list of stakeholders. Describe the roles each will play on your team. Having completed this module, you now know how to define the attributes of a team, list and analyze the stakeholders to your improvement opportunity, reflect on the roles needed for your QI team, and determine the optimal team composition. Consult with faculty at your site for any questions.